Hi guys, I'm Paul Pluter and welcome to the ArchieLuxury corporate channel. And today I want to talk about the world's first automatic chronograph. The world's first automatic chronograph. Who did it? Who really did it? And this is quite a contentious issue there. It's like a lot of great inventions. Often there were different parties working on a similar solution. So who are these different chronographs? Who are they and what do they consist of? Well, basically the automatic wristwatch was gaining popularity in the 50s and 60s. And then it started to move towards chronographs. Chronographs were, before this period here, manual wind. It was thought that to make an automatic chronograph was too difficult. It was too difficult a task. And classic chronographs like the Omega Speedmaster, which became the professional, the Man on the Moon watch, well, these were manual wind. Manual wind. Brands like Patek Philippe, who had magnificent chronographs and grand complications. A lot of these pieces were manual wind. In fact, even Patek Philippe's famous 2499, which is the perpetual calendar chronograph, which John Lennon is rumored to have received from Yoko Ono, it was a Lamania-based movement. It was a manual wind. So the world's first automatic chronograph. Who released it? Well, there were three contenders. The first group was SEIKO. That's correct, SEIKO. SEIKO had the 6139, which is a very interesting type of chronograph, because this watch here, it has the first full rotor, had a vertical clutch, column wheel controlled, and also a quick set day and date. So that was Consortium 1, the Japanese. The second group consisted of a few watch players, and it was led by Jack Heuer. Jack Heuer from Heuer. Now, this consortium consisted of Bruin, who were famous for making compact automatic movements. There was Dubus Dupre, which they were famous for converting movements to chronographs, and Breitling and Hamilton. So you had this consortium of Swiss makers trying to put out an automatic chronograph. And then we had a third consortium which consisted of Zenith, with they're trying to introduce the El Primero. It's the first El Primero, the first. So, who actually did release the first, and who gets that wonderful title? Well, this is where it gets a bit tricky. Zenith, and we'll just have a quick look at I'm wearing my quick wristwatch check. I'm wearing a Zenith Chronomeister El Primero 42mm 1969 Open. This is a reissue of the original chronograph released by Zenith. It's now got the open display there, which was not available originally. This is a variation of the original. This is a reissue. It's also 42 mil. The original 38 mil. So this is a very, very interesting question. Who came out first? Well. Zenith announced it in January 1969. They announced to the press that this was their achievement. They announced that they were releasing an automatic chronograph. Now, that doesn't mean that they had them available. They make an announcement and then it's like Baselworld today. Stock is not immediately available. HEUER, which was part of that consortium, which very famously Bruin, Breitling, Hamilton, HEUER actually had this movement was called the Caliber 11 movement. So this movement here, this is probably one of the most famous Caliber 11, is the Monaco, which was a new shape. So this movement, the Caliber 11 movement, was put into a number of HEUER models. The HEUER itself, it made it to market August 1969. The HEUER Caliber 11 made it to market August 69. However, SEIKO themselves released an automatic chronograph in their home market of Japan, May 1969. Now, there's a lot of speculation. Why didn't they have a lot of hooray and fanfare? And you've got to remember, the main reason is SEIKO wanted to highlight the release of their first quartz, their commercially available quartz watch. So it wasn't announced in the international press. Now, the interesting thing is, these three chronographs here, the SEIKO, it was all designed in-house by SEIKO. It featured, as I said, the first full rotor, a vertical clutch, column wheel controlled chronograph, and it also had a quick set day and date feature. Quite a complicated first effort at a automatic chronograph. This movement existed in SEIKO's range until about 1980. So it really is probably the first. When you say what is the first chronograph, well. The tricky part is, how do we find first? Is it the first to announce it to market? Is it the first to have commercial product hitting the international marketplace? Is it the first to have released it in their home market? Very tricky question indeed. All snobbery and consideration aside there, it was probably SEIKO who was first to release this, and they were probably ahead of everybody else. Now, the thing is, the watch collectors are snobs. It's all about the snobbery. So we want our Swiss companies to do well. They are it's the home of good watchmaking. So the second consortium was, as I said, was the Caliber 11 consortium. Consists of a number of makers there. So this was a module type chronograph. A module being what a chronograph. This was a chronograph part that was added to an existing movement. So it's like a car which was a non-turbo. They've added a turbo bit to it. It was never designed to be a turbo, but they've added the turbo bit to it. So the caliber 11 itself, there a few quirks with the caliber 11 is that, for example, if you take a look at the positioning. Now you might ask, why was the crown on the left-hand side? Now they did this for all the HEUERs that the caliber 11 is on the left-hand side. Why is that so? Why is that so? And that's basically to highlight the fact it's an automatic. You don't need to wind it because it's automatic. You normally wear it and it's ready to go. So that was kind of a way to highlight the fact that it is an automatic movement. Interestingly about it, because it is a chronograph, just see the location of the pushers compared to the crown. You can see the crown is actually lower, and that's because it is a module system. It's not an integrated chronograph. The crown is for the movement is lower, just so they can fit it all in. So not as nicely executed as an integrated chronograph, where it was built with the chronograph feature always in mind. The HEUER caliber 11 itself, there, it is very famous because of the Steve McQueen Le Mans movie, which Steve McQueen wore the Monaco in. Very, very interesting to note at this time, Rolex did not offer, they were not working towards an automatic chronograph. They had their manual wind chronograph. In fact, Rolex themselves did not change this until the late 80s. That's right, Rolex stayed with manual wind. Very outdated system. Hence the reason the manual wind Rolexes were really quite unpopular in the period. This might be why Paul Newman, his wife, bought the cheap, undesired model, which became the Paul Newman and is highly, highly, highly sought after. Not only did she buy him a bit of a dud in the Rolex, but she got him the least desired dial version as well, which has become the Paul Newman, which has become super, super desirable, and the rest is history. But caliber 11 itself there, it wasn't that fantastic. It had a few problems. It was rushed to market and had a few problems. Within a short space, HEUER released caliber 12 to fix up some of the faults. This is one of the annoying things with racing to market. Yes, so HEUER raced to market, and like any first versions, sometimes there are a couple of problems. So in today's reissue, Steve McQueen, coolest man on planet Earth, what happened? Well, HEUER itself, they eventually went broke, and they were resurrected to become Tag HEUER. The caliber 11 Monaco reissue, well, it is true to form. It's grown in size. It's now, instead of being 38 mils, it's actually 39 mils. It's actually the movement itself is now a Solita movement with a Dubai Dupraz module fitted on top. So it is true to form in many ways, but it's not quite the original caliber 11 movement. Interestingly enough, TAG Heuer did release a limited edition in 2009, 2010, this was the limited edition they released with 1,000 coming out, and they were using the ETA movement. So when they released, obviously TAG Heuer is no member, it's not owned by the Swatch group, so they had to go to SEIKO. The Zenith itself there, well, the Zenith El Primero chronograph. Well. That's an interesting situation. So this was sort of the third place to market. But Zenith had been doing some interesting things. They had bought Martel. They bought Martel in the lead up to this race. And Martel was a very, very famous movement maker. So a lot of intellectual property there. Now, the interesting thing is, with the Zenith El Primero movement, there's obviously the very famous history and story. Zenith was taken over by the Americans, ZRC, and the edict came down. Quartz is going to reign supreme. There is no longer a future in mechanical wristwatches. Sell all tooling and machinery for scrap. Obviously, Swiss watchmaker in the back there decided to hide all the stuff in the attic. The rest, as they say, is history, because years later, when they touted the idea, geez, it would be good for us to have a mechanical automatic chronograph again, it could be revealed that the equipment was still there. So it's quite an amazing feat. The Zenith El Primero, out of those three, well, the SEIKO, it lasted until 1980. The Caliber 11 became the TAG Heuer Caliber 11 Monaco. Well, the movement wasn't quite the same as the original in many ways. It changed to a Solita movement. And Zenith itself, that's the only maker who really has their movement that came out in 1969 is the least modified of the three contestants. In fact, perhaps the most important automatic chronograph ever created, the El Primero stood head and shoulders above the rest. And that can be seen today, where this movement has a lot in common with the original. It's basically the same movement. Not much has changed. So, the world's first automatic chronograph. Which one is the answer? Is it the... Well, we would discount the SEIKO because we're brand snobs and we like Swiss whist watches. We like Swiss watches. Of the two, what is the better reissue? The Heuer Caliber 11 really does retain key design characteristics. It's grown slightly, 39mm instead of 38. It's got the same 70s blue. It's got the dial and the markers, very, 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 very true to form. The Zenith, well, Zenith has, the movement is largely the same. The watch has also grown in size. It's now a 42 mil. This is the 42. They still do make the 38 mil, so they have remained true to form. But the most popular one, of course, is the 42. It is more popular because people have gotten big. They've put on weight. The hormones in the chicken. So these two chronographs here, these are amazing chronographs. The first, well, they're both pretty symbolic. Both 1969 release. Which one is the better? I think you'd have to say it's the Zenith. And the Zenith itself there, the reason Rolex in the late 80s went with the Zenith movement was because it was a compact chronograph. Rolex would not need to change the design of the case to accommodate this movement. And the fact that Rolex chose the Zenith movement just shows you how damn good this movement was. So I would say, I think each of these three chronographs are important. The SEIKO 6139, very important piece. The Caliber 11 by Monaco and the other consortium holders, and the Zenith. They are all amazing chronographs. And if you're a serious watch collector, you should have some of these key pieces in your collection. The first automatic chronograph, well, it's probably SEIKO who gets it because they were first to release it. Okay, it may have been to the Japanese market, but it, fair and square, they got it first out to the audience. HEUER raced theirs. They deservedly get number 2 spot. And El Primero, the Zenith El Primero, really gets the 3rd spot. However, theirs is probably the greatest chronograph of that period. Interestingly enough, how the worm has turned. Zenith and HEUER, 2 big competitors, are now within the same group. LVMH, Louis Vuitton Group, owns both brands. They own Zenith and they own Tag Heuer. So the irony, and the irony is also extended when you consider that Tag Heuer, when they were looking for a column wheel vertical clutch chronograph for their Tag Heuer range, they used SEIKO Instruments technology. They bought a movement from SEIKO, which really isn't that bad. It isn't that big a deal. They went to market and chose a movement which is really good for them. So I don't think it's really a bad thing. I think there's a place and a space for all these great things. For me, I love my Zenith and my Monaco. The greatest. To me, these Swiss babies are the way to go. So that's the irony of the situation. I'm Paul Pluta. This is the ArchieLuxury corporate channel. Please continue to watch. Please tell me what you think of these longer. These videos here do take a lot of time and effort to produce. At the moment, the monetization is very, very small. If you are able to make a small donation, I would greatly appreciate it. Quality YouTube videos take time and money to produce. A small PayPal donation to ArchieLuxury72@gmail.com would really help me make more quality content. The other option, of course, is to subscribe to Patreon. Sponsor me on Patreon. Help me stay full-time on YouTube. See you later. I'm going to play with my chronographs. Thank you.